Welcome to another episode of Business Beyond Borders. Today, I'm very excited to be diving into two topics, one around the Brazilian market and second around aviation and more specifically aviation law. I'm very excited to have with us Neil Montgomery, founder and managing partner of Montgomery and Associates, a full-service law firm that helps multinational clients expand into the Brazilian market and for Brazilian clients looking to expand internationally. Very excited to dive into these topics with him today. So welcome, Neil. Welcome to today's episode.
Thank you, Daphne. It's a pleasure being here, and thanks for the invitation.
No problem at all. Let's kick off by maybe having you share, do a quick introduction of yourself and share a little bit about your journey as a lawyer so far.
Okay. Well, my name is Neil Montgomery, and you can say that that's not your typical Brazilian name, although I was born in Brazil. My name comes from Scotland because my father is Scottish. My mother was Brazilian. They met here in Brazil. I was born in Brazil. I left Brazil when I was 4 years old. I went to live in the United Kingdom, a few months in Solihull in England, and then 3 years in Aberdeen, Scotland. That's where I started going to school, hence the wee
Nice.
Scottish accent that may be still there in the background. Then at the age of around 7, I moved to Lima, Peru. I lived 6 years in Peru. I learned Spanish there. And then at the age of around 13, 14, I came to Brazil, to São Paulo. Went to the British school here to finish off my secondary education, went to law school here in Brazil, did my master's in international law as well at the University of São Paulo. And then I also lived during my adult life in London in 2003, already as a lawyer, working at a British law firm. So I think life has prepared me to work on the international front, having learned several languages fluently. So I'm a native speaker nowadays of three languages, Portuguese, English, and Spanish. And that has
Amazing.
helped me a lot, yes. And our firm, Montgomery, was founded in 2013. On the 1st of June, we'll turn 11 years old.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We are a full service law firm, or as I like to put it, a lean full service law firm, which is our registered brand and innovative business model as well. So our specialty is working with foreign clients doing business in Brazil of all shapes and sizes, nationalities, sectors, and also advising Brazilian clients investing overseas. We are a team at the moment of around 25 lawyers. Our head offices are here in São Paulo. We also have a presence in Rio de Janeiro and Vitória here in Brazil. And we have had lawyers working remotely from overseas, from places like London. Currently, we have a lawyer in Paris as well. So we're very multinational. We're not a large firm here in Brazil, but we do compete with our large competitors. And I think the difference in the way we provide our legal services is the personalized tailor-made services that we provide, where everybody is hands-on. So even to the most senior person of the firm, which is myself as the managing partner, I'm very hands-on. I see that everything is being done right by my colleagues and always keep to the deadlines and always offering a personalized service. So I think that's what makes us stand out in the Brazilian market.
Amazing. And earlier, as you introduced yourself, you also mentioned that your firm has adopted the lean full service approach. Could you share a little bit more about that and how this approach has benefited your target clients, which are largely international in nature?
Yes, well, before I founded the firm, I was a partner at a larger Brazilian firm, but I was a bit fed up of big law. I wanted to do things differently. I've always been very entrepreneurial, and I have my own philosophy, my own methodology. And so I wanted to do, let's say, my own gig.
Yeah.
And so I left my previous firm and set up Montgomery. At the time, Montgomery Associados, because the abbreviation for Montgomery Associados is M&A, which is
Okay.
also the abbreviation for mergers and acquisitions.
Yes.
And I always like to say that in Brazil, M&A is done more smoothly with M&A, Montgomery Associados. But then last year, when we turned 10, we wanted to modernize our brand.
Mhm.
So we modernized our logo and just became Montgomery, following the global trend of law firms just having very short names and
Right.
names that are more easily pronounceable internationally. So
Mm.
asociados, we had certain problems in English-speaking persons pronouncing asociados correctly. So now we're just Montgomery. But lean full service means that we bring to the legal profession the concepts of lean manufacturing.
Mm.
So with a leaner team, as I said, around 25 lawyers, each lawyer specializes in at least 2 or 3 areas of law. That's
Mm.
how we can keep teams lean, make work more efficient, and of course, cut down on costs. So I think that is a business model that has become very successful for us. When I founded the firm, 100 clients of mine followed me from my previous firm, and now we're getting closer to 900 clients,
Wow.
90%
Amazing.
of which are multinational companies. So I believe something we're doing right, and I think this business model, and it's also good for the lawyers on our team because
Mhm.
they interact amongst each other, and they can think outside of the box
Right.
by really practicing different types of law, not superficially, but really
Mhm.
as specialists. So I think when we are involved in negotiations, including counsel from other companies or other firms, we see the difference of our lawyers because we can add more value to the attorney-client relationship
Yeah.
by having, let's say, more in-depth specialist experience in multiple areas. And I
Mhm.
think that adds value to the relationship. So it has become our brand, our model. We registered it as a trademark here in Brazil. We have even
Amazing.
had to notify Brazilian law firms that were using it without our authorization. So we
Right.
had to notify many of them to drop it or start paying a license fee to us to use the trademark. And I know that we have inspired law firms as well around the world, especially in Portugal and things like that. So it's our innovative business model and brand, and it has been very successful to date.
That's so amazing because you are not just you're not just entrepreneurial in the fact that you have started your own law firm, but you're also continuously innovating the way law firms are managing their practice and how they should do business, which is super exciting. Maybe just tying back to what some of your practice areas and diving into one of the areas that you specialize in, which is in aviation law.
Mhm.
That's something that it's quite unique. How did
Yeah.
you actually get into aviation law itself?
Okay, well, definitely. As I said, my specialty has been working with foreign clients doing
Correct.
business in Brazil. Okay,
Correct.
so while I started nearly 3 decades ago as an M&A corporate lawyer,
Hmm.
transactional lawyer, working with foreign clients, I really had to broaden my practice to
Yeah.
include other things like employment and litigation and intellectual property, real estate, all the different areas. And I think life has been good to me, and I have been lucky because nowadays I'm very well known internationally in
Hmm.
2 regulated markets. One of them is the aviation
Okay.
world, and especially the airline industry,
Hmm.
and the other is the gambling industry, the
Ah,
gaming and
okay.
betting industry as well. Yesterday, I was very pleased to see that I was included in a global power list of the 100 most influential people in the iGaming industry. And I turned out
Congratulations.
as, thank you, as number 36 on the list, the
Wow.
best ranked Brazilian on the list. So that made me very proud. But going back to the airline industry
Hmm.
specifically, I mentioned that luck played an essential role in this. One day, I got a call from the vice president of the Americas from Emirates,
Mm,
the Dubai-based airline, when I was at my previous firm, and he connected with me because of my British background. So he
mm.
was also British, and coincidentally, his name was Nigel Page, and Nigel and Neil are
Right.
synonyms. They are the same word, the same name from the Celtic language. And so he got in touch with me and said, Neil, We have a lawyer helping us in Brazil, but we're not pleased with the work he's doing. I saw that you're half British as well. Would you be able to help us?
Mm.
And that was my first ever client, Emirates. So
Okay.
quite an important client to start off a career in aviation. And it was a very difficult time in Brazil
Mm.
because Brazil had suffered two major aviation accidents. One with LATAM, with the
Okay.
airplane coming off the runway and crashing and everybody dying. And there was another mid-air collision between a Gol Boeing 737 and a Legacy jet, and everybody died as well on the
Oh
Gol
no.
plane. And so at that time, Brazil was in what we call an aviation chaos. The
Yeah.
air traffic controllers went on strike and things were a big mess.
Mm.
But even with all that, I managed to successfully navigate the bureaucracy and the regulations, and I managed to get the licenses needed for Emirates to fly to Brazil in record-breaking time. And I'm very proud that this application for the licenses was the first time this exercise had been conducted for a foreign airline company in Brasilia, because at that time, the ANAC, the Civil Aviation Authority in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
responsible for granting the licenses, had been created only a few years earlier. Before, it used to be a military division of the government, and then it became, let's say, a regulatory agency in Brasilia. And the application for Emirates was the first to be processed in Brasilia. So everything
Wow.
was new, and I
Yeah.
did a good job, and the client was very happy. I met the Sheikh in São Paulo at the inaugural party. And then afterwards, by word of mouth,
Mm-hmm.
the word spread that Neil Montgomery did a very good job. And so after that, I started advising many other foreign airline companies like Turkish Airlines, Singapore Airlines,
Mm.
Air New Zealand, and several others. To date, I have been in this business for nearly 20 years.
Wow.
On an average, I have advised one foreign airline per year to set up shop in Brazil.
Amazing. Like you're almost bringing countries together into Brazil through the process.
Well, actually, Daphne, there's something very interesting. I decided to study law and
Uh-huh.
to become a lawyer because originally I wanted to become a diplomat, a
Oh.
Brazilian diplomat, and represent my country internationally. Maybe because of my international background
Mm-hmm.
and the experience and the languages and the knowledge I learned living in many places. I said maybe being a diplomat would unite all these skills into the best profession. So when I graduated from law school in 1996, I sat in 1997 the examination to become a Brazilian diplomat. I went all the way to the last phase in Brasilia. But when I was in Brasilia and I learned more about the profession, I thought it was a bit boring and underpaid as well. I said, no, I think it would be best if I continue as an international lawyer. So that's what I
Yeah.
did. And decades later, I think I did the best choice of my life. And I consider myself nowadays, Daphne, to be a private ambassador for Brazil. So since I have
Paka.
brought companies and business to Brazil and business from Brazil overseas, I think that has been the best way to promote my country. And so
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, I like bringing nations together and people together. And I think I'm doing a much better job as a private ambassador than if I were a civil servant and a representative of the Brazilian government.
That's amazing. So, I'm so lucky to have you on board with us, even though I'm here in Singapore, to have you share your experience with us on this episode today.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure as well.
Yeah. And diving more closely into the aviation area, given that you have spent the last 20 years and so much experience accumulated advising foreign airlines setting up their operations in Brazil, could you share some insights on navigating the complexities of international aviation law and how they kind of intersect with Brazilian regulations?
Okay, well, I've always been a very big aviation aficionado, so much so that at one stage I had a car with a number plate here in Brazil, with Fly 1783, which was the year man flew for the first time in a hot air balloon with the Montgolfier brothers in Paris, France. It could have nearly been Montgomery because Montgolfier is very similar, and actually Montgomery, the surname Montgomery actually is originated in Normandy in France, and
Oh,
then
interesting.
yes, and then the Montgomerys, they crossed the English Channel in 1066 with William the Conqueror, and then settled down in the UK and eventually in Scotland. But originally, the Montgomerys came from France, so there's a French connection there as well. And aviation, therefore, since I was a kid, has been rooted inside me as a big passion. When I was a kid, I wanted to become a commercial air pilot. Thankfully, I didn't have the eyesight for that, and so I became a lawyer and an aviation lawyer as well. Nowadays, I prefer to be a passenger and travel internationally. As you know, I travel quite extensively.
Yes.
And so it's much better to be a passenger than a pilot as well. And so here in Brazil, aviation law is quite very well regulated. Aviation is always very close to Brazilians' hearts as well, because for Brazilians, we consider the father of aviation being Alberto Santos Dumont as well, who flew for the first time in public in a heavier than air in 1906 in Paris with his plane, the 14 bis. The Americans, of course, say that the first men to fly a heavier than air were the Wright brothers in 1903, 3 years earlier. But for Brazilians, the father of aviation is still Alberto Santos Dumont. So we do have a very intricate legal framework here in Brazil. As I mentioned, ANAC, the Civil Aviation Authority, supervises the application of aviation law. I'm very fortunate that out of all the regulatory and governmental bodies in Brazil, ANAC, for me, is maybe one of the best. They're very professional, very transparent, very objective. So it's a pleasure working with them. And they always tell me that when I bring a new airline to Brazil, it's always good that we are working with them because they know all the documentation will be perfect when it arrives to them. So that gives them less work to do. The laws have evolved over time. Foreign airline companies, specifically, when they set up shop in Brazil, they open up a branch. They don't open up a subsidiary. So the corporate structure is a bit different for a corporate lawyer to deal with, because you need approval. You needed approval from the federal government in Brazil to set up the branch. And then you had to obtain an operating license as well to start flying the regular scheduled air routes. Nowadays, the process has been simplified, which is very good. So the red tape has been cut. And now the initial license that you needed to obtain to set up a branch isn't required anymore. You go straight to the commercial registry and you file your documents. And then you have to, of course, apply for the operating license. But instead of 2 licenses, we now need 1 license. So that has cut down on the time needed to set up shop in Brazil. Foreign airlines do need to open a branch because in order to sell their tickets locally, they need a bank account. In order to have a bank account, they need a tax number. To have a tax number, they need to have the branch. So it's a sequence of events. But Brazil is indeed a land of opportunity. It is a very big country. We have more than 220 million people. We are far away from many places in the world, so it is an interesting place for foreign airlines to connect. Unfortunately, Singapore Airlines doesn't fly here anymore. They stopped their route through Barcelona several years ago. Maybe, hopefully, one day they'll return to Brazil, and I'll be waiting for them with my arms open. There is a demand, I believe, for airlines from Southeast Asia to fly to Brazil, because we don't have any direct air routes. All people traveling to Southeast Asia nowadays would have to connect either in the Middle East or in Europe, or go the other way through Santiago in Chile. So there would definitely be a business opportunity for Southeast Asian carriers to fly to Brazil, especially now that the aircraft have been developed and the ranges and autonomy are much longer. So we may have maybe one day a direct flight from Singapore, from places like Hong Kong, directly to São Paulo. Who knows?
Yeah.
One of the downsides that not only foreign airlines but Brazilian carriers as well find here in Brazil, and Brazil is very infamous
Mm,
for this, is the highly litigious environment they find in Brazil.
right.
Brazil is the record-breaking country in terms of the number of passenger claims filed in court every year worldwide. I
Wow.
believe Brazilian passengers sometimes see an opportunity to abuse their rights as consumers, to take legal action against airline companies. And the Brazilian judiciary, unfortunately, although Brazil is a signatory to many international conventions like the Montreal Convention that limits the liability of carriers,
Yeah.
and the Supreme Court in Brazil has upheld the validity of that convention. However, to the extent the Supreme Court has determined that the convention does not cover what we call moral damages. It's like the
Mm-hmm.
pain and suffering
Yeah.
inflicted on the passengers. That tends to be a escape valve
Mm-hmm.
for the judiciary in Brazil to grant quite large awards to passengers that have been in any way affected by some incident, whether it be a canceled flight or a loss of luggage or a delayed flight or something like that. And Brazilian courts have granted quite high awards to the benefit of Brazilian passengers. So there has been a sort of industry created where
Mm-hmm.
passengers have, let's say, gone to court to try and get money out of the airlines. And most of them do succeed because the consumer laws in Brazil are quite strict.
Yeah.
They do apply the concept of strict liability and joint and several liability.
Mm-hmm.
So it's if there's something that is difficult for airlines in Brazil is to handle the passenger claims. It has been studied and ascertained that maybe up to 2% of the costs of airlines operated in Brazil
Yeah.
come from the handling of passenger claims.
Oh, interesting. Because the expenses is quite significant. So for it to hit 2%, that must be quite a significant amount.
Yes.
Yeah. And also, you earlier you mentioned about how there might be quite a significant opportunity for Southeast Asian aircrafts who are looking to fly internationally or direct flights to Brazil.
Mhm.
For such carriers or new foreign carriers considering entering the Brazilian market, what advice would you have for them?
Well, always from the very outset, engage competent legal counsel that is, of course, experienced in navigating Brazilian legislation,
Mm-hmm.
experienced in dealing with the government authorities, the airports as well. I think this applies to any area of law or any sector in Brazil. You do have to have two trustworthy professionals at all times from the very beginning. A
Yeah.
very experienced and trustful lawyer, and also a good accountant as well. I think those
Mm,
two professionals are vital and
yeah.
key to your success in Brazil.
Okay. And I think if you reflect back on the last 20 years of your experience working with various airlines, what is your most memorable experience helping a foreign aircraft expand into the Brazilian market?
Well, I've had so many memorable events. I think, of course, the first time I ever worked for an airline with Emirates, as I mentioned, was indeed very memorable. It was extremely important for me and to shake hands with the ruler of Dubai, for example, at the inaugural party. One of the things I'm looking forward to, one of my more recent clients is Virgin Atlantic Airways,
Okay.
and which for me is a specific honor because going back to my heritage, right, being half British, half Brazilian, I think, and aviation aficionado, as I said, it's like a dream come true to maybe one day meet Sir Richard Branson. So I believe maybe that the pinnacle of my aviation law career will be the day where when Sir Richard lands here in Brazil and I finally get to meet him personally. The inaugural flight has been planned for next year, so we're not
Amazing.
too far away.
Okay.
So hopefully that will be the pinnacle. But I have had other exciting moments, like for example, during the COVID pandemic. I
Mm,
think that was one of the worst ever episodes for the aviation industry
for sure.
worldwide.
Yep.
And of course, that impacted us a lot
Mm,
because at the time, uh, most of our top clients were airline companies, and they were having problems in paying their bills as well. So
yep.
we were not receiving our legal fees for many, many months. But we partnered, as we do with our clients, very closely with our airline clients. And I think they'll never forget the appreciation and the support that we gave them. And again, we are not a big law firm. So at the time, we struggled a lot, but we struggled together with our clients. And we
Mm,
came out of the crisis both stronger than as we entered the crisis. And I think that really marks the relationships, the bond that we have with our clients. And so one of our clients, which is a low-cost carrier from
mm-hmm.
Argentina, it's called
Yeah.
Flybondi. We have been their exclusive legal advisors since the very beginning. And the relationship I have nowadays with them transcends just an attorney-client relationship. We
Mm,
have become friends. We have become business partners to the airline. We have opened doors. We have done so many things that I think uh, our clients see us not as problem solvers,
mm.
but as consiglieri, as business partners, as real true friends. And I think if there's one thing I can take away from my experience, not only in the airline industry, but all other industries we are involved, is this strong bond that we form with our clients.
That's amazing. I can see how deeply you care for them, and to be able to, walk alongside them through the toughest of times. I'm sure that creates a very strong bond and also a special relationship that extends beyond something that is purely business. And it attests so strongly to, your entrepreneurial spirit, that we have touched on earlier. So I'm so inspired by what you have shared so far. Um, just building on this, as we look ahead within the aviation industry, currently there are quite a lot of changes, and the industry is constantly evolving,
Yeah.
with quite a lot of topics around, sustainability, digital transformation coming up. How have you seen the approach of foreign airlines entering into the Brazilian market change at the backdrop of these industry changes that are happening as well?
Yes, well, indeed, many of the things you just mentioned, like sustainability, which is
Mm-hmm.
in the context of ESG, um, new technologies as well in the business, they
Yep.
are changing the landscape quite dramatically. Here in Brazil, the regulation tries to accompany, but of course, regulation always comes after all
Mm,
these innovations. Uh, the aviation industry specifically is very cost intensive. The margins are very small. So, of
mm,
course, the more they can make the industry efficient, the better for
yep.
everyone, not only for the carriers, but of course, in making things more efficient, then of course passengers can also benefit from reduced air rates as well. So I think everybody can benefit from improvements to the industry. However, as I said, regulation always comes one step behind. And so while Brazil has modernized its regulations, as I mentioned, cutting down on the red tape, the bureaucracy, there is still much to do.
Mm,
Brazil has one of the most expensive airline fuel prices in the world. As I said, it has also the obstacle of the passenger claim industry
yep.
as well. So there's a lot to do to modernize regulation, but I think we're moving forward. And of course, the airlines have a lot to contribute. Many of my clients are trying to introduce innovative technological solutions as well,
Mm-hmm.
but they need to be supported by regulation in Brazil. So we need our authorities to walk hand in hand with them to keep up with the new world, the new technologies. And I think ANAC being as innovative and modern as it is will ultimately catch up. But there's still much to do.
Mm,
And of course, us lawyers have a key role in this, not only to educate the government, but also to educate the judiciary. So there are many groups of lawyers and associations, and there are also international associations like IATA that try to contribute to educate in the Brazilian judiciary to look differently to the industry and apply the international conventions and start clamping down on the abuses of
Right.
passengers here in Brazil. And I belong to many of these associations. I'm very proud to be an officer of the Aviation Law Committee of the International Bar Association.
Ah, nice.
For those who don't know what the IBA is, it's the largest congregation of lawyers in the world. It is headquartered in London, and it promotes seminars and conferences around the world during the year. There's always one annual conference that is the largest lawyers event every year. You mentioned to me when we met earlier today that you were at the annual conference of the IBA last year in Paris. I was also there. Unfortunately, we didn't meet personally, but hopefully if you're going to attend the Mexico City annual conference in September of this year, we need to meet up there. And I'm always proud, at least for the last 2 years, being an officer of the IBA's Aviation Law Committee. I'm responsible for the quality at conferences, and specifically, my incumbency has been to organize the off-site tours, both in Paris and in Miami. In Miami, we took our delegates to Miami International Airport, and in Paris, we went to the Le Bourget Air and Space Museum, which is fantastic. I don't know if you've been there, but it's a place to go. And for this year, as an exclusive to you and as fresh news, this year's offsite tour will be to Aeroméxico Formación. It's the Aeromexico, which is Mexico's premier airline, pilot training center. And that will be on the Tuesday of the week of the conference. And so if you're there and interested in attending, please show up and join the group.
For sure, for sure. Sounds very exciting. And also, you know, your childhood dream of becoming a diplomat is definitely in play from what you have shared, you know, shaping the regulation and also participating not just from a Brazilian perspective, but shaping it from an international perspective as well. Super, super impressive. And for yourself, like how would you you know, within the aviation industry, how important do you see international partnerships coming into play for the industry itself?
Well, I think they are essential, and I think there are many types of international partnerships that we could talk about. We've mentioned briefly the existence of many associations, right? So the IATA, intergovernmental associations like ICAO as well. Then you have lawyer-specific associations like the IBA, and working as well with foreign firms as well. I always go to an IATA conference called the World Legal Symposium that brings together the elite aviation lawyers in the world once a year. This year, it was in February in Vancouver, so quite far away from me, but always a go-to conference that I cannot miss, because not only my clients and other airlines are there, but the elite of the aviation law world is there as well. So it's the place to be and to be seen. And so I think this fosters the continuous education of aviation lawyers worldwide, and the interaction as well between lawyers from different jurisdictions. So we can always learn. And being a lawyer is a continuous learning curve. Every day we know something, we learn something new. So I think international partnerships are vital, not only for us lawyers, but for governments, for airlines, for all the stakeholders in the industry.
Amazing, amazing. And now kind of zooming out a bit, having advised, you know, many clients in Brazil on expanding overseas, and for foreign clients expanding to Brazil, what are some of the most common pitfalls that you observe and some myths that you'd like to, you know, debunk?
All right. Well, starting from investors investing into Brazil, as I said before, the key thing is to find a good lawyer.
Mhm.
Sometimes clients want to cut down on cost and don't use the most appropriate lawyers or prefer to use other professionals like an accountant to set up a company. And so things can go bad early on. And if you don't engage the right professional from the very outset, then especially in countries like Brazil, where the waters are very turbulent, you can create a snowball effect where things get worse over time, and then sometimes it's very difficult to correct things. So my recommendation is to engage competent counsel from the very beginning, and the lawyer tends to be the gate opener to many other professionals, so accountants, banks, other service providers, of the authorities. And I think in terms of obstacles or downsides in doing business in Brazil, I think the bureaucracy is always top of the list. Brazil, as a Latin American country, has thrived through red tape. I think there have been improvements over the years, and that amount of red tape has decreased. But it is still a very highly regulated, a highly bureaucratic jurisdiction. And
Mhm.
so you need a good lawyer to navigate all those laws and regulations. Otherwise, you can get into trouble. But once you have the patience and you have surpassed the initial obstacles of getting acquainted with the local culture, the local legal framework, then it's time to thrive in business. Countries like Brazil, as I said, with over 220 million inhabitants, is a land of opportunity for many different companies in many different sectors. So I think once you surpass and get used to how business is done in a specific jurisdiction, then you are to thrive. I think if there's one tip, one takeaway I can give foreign investors always looking into investing in another country is always try and take off the hat of your country of origin and put on the hat of the country where you're stepping foot in. You cannot
Mm.
act or think with your hat of a foreigner in a foreign jurisdiction. You have to try and blend in, integrate, understand, and then you will thrive. But don't try to impose your own practices, your own philosophies to the local culture. Try
Yeah.
to see what can integrate and what can't. And I think those who will be more successful will be those which will have the greatest ability to more smoothly integrate with the local culture and jurisdiction.
With the 11th anniversary of Montgomery coming up soon in June, what are you most excited for your law firm in the next 2 to 3 years?
Okay, well, Daphne, it's exciting to turn 11 for starters. And maybe one of the most exciting developments will be in relation to the gambling sector, where the firm is the leading firm in Brazil for this industry. Just to give you a few bits of background information, I also started in the gaming industry some 20 years ago. And I started because of my British heritage and also because of luck. Some 20 years ago, before setting up my own firm, I received an email from a British publication called EGR, E-Gaming Review, where they invited me to speak at a gaming conference they were promoting in Buenos Aires in Argentina. At the time, I didn't know anything about gaming law, although I liked to gamble, but I knew nothing about gaming law. And coincidentally, at the time, I had an intern who was graduating from law school. He was called Marcelo, and we're friends to date. And here in Brazil, when you graduate from law school, you have to do an extended essay, which is known as a TCC. And I approached Marcel and said, Marcel, well, I received this invitation to speak in Argentina on the legal framework for gaming and betting in Brazil. Maybe this is something you can help me with, and it can be a win-win situation after all, because you need to write your TCC, and coincidentally, you're also a poker player. So why don't we do the following? Why don't you help me with the research and help me put together the PowerPoint presentation, and I'll help you in after you write your extended essay on this subject. I'll review it, and I think it's a win-win situation. And that's what we did, and everything went to plan. I went to Argentina, I spoke at this event. People liked what I had to say. And since I have been going to London at least once a year, every year since 2006, I gradually met the world's most important lawyers in the gaming industry in London, and gradually they sent over work to me, and therefore bit by bit I got further introduced into the industry and I grew my practice. Then during the pandemic, since I was not traveling extensively as I do, I was grounded here in Brazil. I participated in all seminars, all interviews, wrote all the possible articles to gain visibility locally as well. And now, after all these years, I've become one of the main lawyers in Brazil in this sector. And my firm is recognized as the leading full service firm in the gaming industry in Brazil. So I think the most exciting development will be now with gaming having been legalized and being regulated in Brazil, there will be a landslide of foreign direct investment into
Yeah.
Brazil because currently there are up to thousands of foreign operators that access the market. And it is expected, with federal licenses being made available in Brazil for gaming operators, that hundreds will pour into Brazil.
Yeah.
And so this is the time to maybe collect on my bet of 20 years ago and help all these foreign companies set up shop in Brazil, apply for the license, and operate and navigate these waters, which are not easy waters, as I said before, of Brazil. So I think that would be the most exciting development of helping all these companies set up shop and thrive in Brazil, and maybe with the demand of increased work, grow the firm even further, maybe double the size of the firm in the years to come.
That's amazing. I think, maybe we should have another podcast inviting you to share more about the gaming industry and how it will develop in Brazil in the coming years. But thank you so much, Neil, for joining us in today's episode. It has been so inspiring listening to not just, your journey as a lawyer, but also how all of your past come into play and culminating into what you have built so successfully today, Montgomery. And I'm very excited for the future of the firm and wishing it all the best and all the success in the world.
Thank you very much, Daphne. There's one final thing that I wanted to say, that success is not done individually. It's a group effort. Of course, it takes a lot of sacrifice, determination, consistency, but it is a group effort. Not only here, I have a wonderful team at the firm, and we get along very well. And it's the beauty of the lean full service as well. But above all, it's very important as well to count with the support of family. You can see in the background some photographs of my family. I'm also a father, I'm a husband, I'm a father of 2 daughters, and I try to be as good father and husband as I can. So I think to be successful in life and in business, you need balance both in your professional life and in your personal life as well. So if there's one tip I can give out there to the younger generation, is to always invest in yourself, in your family, in your loved ones, both in and out of your office, and do what you do with passion, right? With determination, with consistency, because maybe the results will not come early on. Sometimes the results take a while to materialize, but they will come. And so I'm a very happy human being nowadays, because I think that I'm able to have balance in both areas of my life, and I'm doing my best to make this world a better place as well. And I think even if it's a small bit, if everyone contributes towards making the world a better place, I think at the end of the day, we'll be much better off as a collectivity as well. So that would be my 2 cents just to wrap up this podcast, which has been fantastic to participate. And again, Definitely. Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you very much for staying up in Singapore, because I know it's late now in Singapore. It's 9:30 in the morning in Brazil, but it must be quite late in Singapore. And it's a Friday for you as well. The weekend is starting. So again, it's been a wonderful experience, a very energized conversation, and you can count on me whenever you want.
Thank you so much, and hope to see you at this year's IBA event. And hopefully I get to join you on the tour.
I hope so. I hope so. I'll be looking forward to that.
Thank you so much, Neil.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Business Beyond Borders. If you have any feedback or thoughts, do write into us at support@bluent.com. Click to follow to tune into the next episode. See you again soon.